The night was alive with drums. The sound roared across the village like thunder, echoing through the forest and dancing over the rooftops of mud huts. Fires blazed, people clapped, children laughed, and the air was filled with excitement. For tomorrow was no ordinary day. Tomorrow, the village of Umuaka would choose a new king. But not in the way most villages chose a ruler. No. Umuaka was different. For generations, they had one sacred tradition. The talking drum would choose the king. It was not the elders, not the warriors, not even the chiefs. Only the magical drum, gifted long ago by the ancestors. The drum sat inside the king's hut, silent and waiting. No one dared beat it unless it was the day to crown a new ruler. On that day, every man who thought he was worthy would enter the hut and strike the drum. If the drum stayed silent, the man was rejected. But if the drum spoke, deep and powerful, then all would know, this is the one chosen by the ancestors. And now, after the old king's death, the time had come. In the center of the village stood two tall young men, the late king's sons, Prince Oba and Prince Ikin. Oba, the older one, was strong, handsome, and proud. He walked like the crown already belonged to him. His clothes were bright with beads and cowries. "I am the first son of the king," he said loudly. "The throne is mine by birth." Ikin, the younger, was clever but proud in another way. He smiled at the villagers, pretending to be humble, but his eyes shone with ambition. "I will be the one the drum chooses," he whispered to himself. The people watched them with hope and fear. Both princes were proud. Both wanted the crown. But only the drum could decide. Far away, on the edge of the village, a boy named Chike listened to the drums. He was not a prince. He was not even from a great family. Chike was an orphan. His mother and father had died when he was small. Since then, he had lived by helping farmers, carrying water, and sweeping the village square. He had no fine clothes, no beads, no wealth. The people hardly noticed him. But Chike had something else. A heart that was kind, and a spirit that was humble. When children cried, he gave them his food. When elders needed help, he carried their loads. And when the moon was high, he would sit under the iroko tree, singing softly to himself. He never thought of being king. To him, kingship was for princes, chiefs, and warriors, not for boys with nothing. But destiny often hides where no one looks. Morning came. The village gathered in the square, their voices buzzing like bees. The elders sat in a circle, their staff of office beside them. In the middle stood the sacred hut of the talking drum. One by one, the men of the village who thought themselves worthy stepped forward. The first was Oba, the older prince. He entered the hut with his head high. Silence fell as he struck the drum with his hand. Thump! But nothing happened. The drum did not speak. Oba frowned and struck it again, harder. Thump! Still nothing. The drum was silent. He stormed out, his face red with anger. "This drum is broken," he shouted. But the elders shook their heads. The drum is never wrong. Next was Ikin, the younger prince. He walked proudly, bowing slightly as if already crowned. He struck the drum gently first. Thump. Nothing. He struck it harder. Still nothing. Frustrated, he struck it again and again until sweat poured down his face. But the drum remained as silent as a stone. He came out, forcing a smile, but the people saw the fear in his eyes. One after another, rich men, warriors, and chiefs entered the hut. They struck the drum. They begged the ancestors. But the drum stayed quiet. By midday, no one had been chosen. The people began to murmur. What will happen? Who will lead us? In the crowd, Chike stood at the back, watching. He never thought of stepping forward. He was just a poor boy. Who would take him seriously? But then something strange happened. As he stood under the shade of the tree, he heard it. A faint rhythm. A heartbeat. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. It came not from the crowd, not from the dancers, but from inside the sacred hut. The talking drum was calling. His heart raced. Could it be? No. It was impossible. He shook his head, but the sound grew louder. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. The elders looked uneasy. The princess frowned. And Chike, trembling, felt his feet moving toward the hut. The crowd stared. Where is he going? Someone whispered. That is only Chike, the orphan boy. The princess laughed loudly. Oba shouted, Go back to your sweeping, boy. The throne is not for you. But the elders raised their hands. Let him try. If the drum calls him, who are we to refuse? Chike swallowed hard. He stepped into the hut. Inside, it was quiet. The drum sat on its stand, glowing faintly in the dim light. Chike's heart pounded. He reached out with shaking hands and touched it. The moment his skin met the drum, the ground shook. Boom! The drum spoke. Loud, deep, and powerful. Boom, boom, boom. The sound filled the hut, roared into the square, and shook the very trees. Birds flew from their nests. Children screamed and clapped. The elders stood to their feet, eyes wide in wonder. The drum has spoken, they cried. The ancestors have chosen. Chike stumbled back, his hands shaking. He could not believe it. The drum had answered to him, an orphan boy. Outside, the princes were furious. This is madness. Oba shouted. How can a boy with no name, no family, no bloodline, be king? Ikin sneered. This is a trick. The elders have planned this to shame us. The crowd erupted. Some shouted, The drum has chosen, we must obey. Others shouted, Impossible. Only a prince can be king. The village was divided. The air was heavy with tension. And Chike stood in the middle, trembling, not knowing if he had just been blessed or cursed. And just as the arguments grew louder, the ground shook again. The talking drum beat on its own. Boom, boom. Boom boom. The sound was no longer a choice, it was a command. And it echoed in every heart. Obey the drum. The square shook as the talking drum beat again. Boom boom. Boom boom. The people gasped. The drum had never spoken this way before, by itself, without a hand striking it. Its voice roared across the land like thunder, and even the forest seemed to bow to the sound. The elders raised their staffs. The ancestors have spoken. The drum has chosen Chike, the orphan boy. But the princes would not accept it. Oba, the older prince, clenched his fist. His eyes blazed with fire. Never. I am the first son of the king. How can an orphan sit where my father sat? This is an insult to our bloodline. Ikin, the younger, smirked. Yes, brother. Let us see if this boy can even survive one night as king. The two princes looked at each other, and for the first time, they agreed. They would not allow Chike to wear the crown. The people began to argue. Some shouted, "The drum has chosen. We must obey the ancestors." Others shouted, "No. A king must come from the royal family." The village square turned into chaos. Women pulled their children close. Men raised their voices in anger. The air was hot with division. In the middle of it all, Chike stood frozen, his heart pounding. He had not asked for this. He did not want power. He only wanted peace. But destiny does not ask permission. Finally, the oldest elder, Papa Nedi, lifted his staff. His voice was like a bell. Silence. The crowd hushed. The princes do not believe the drum's choice. Very well. Let there be a trial. Tonight, Chike will sit before the talking drum. If he is truly chosen, the ancestors will protect him. If not, the spirits will take him away. The people murmured in fear. A trial before the drum was rare and dangerous. The princes smiled coldly. They were sure Chike would fail. That night, the square was lit with fires. The talking drum sat in the center, glowing faintly. The villagers gathered around in silence, their eyes on the orphan boy. Chike knelt before the drum. His heart trembled, but he whispered softly, "Ancestors, if you sent me here, I will obey. If not, let your will be done." The princes stepped forward, each holding a spear. "If the drum does not speak for him," Oba announced, "we will end this foolishness tonight." The crowd held its breath. The air grew heavy. The fire flickered. Then, boom, boom, boom. The talking drum thundered louder than ever. The sound was so strong that the ground shook beneath their feet. The people fell to their knees, covering their ears. From the shadows, a wind rose, carrying the voice of the ancestors. The king is not chosen by birth or wealth. The king is chosen by the heart. The drum has spoken. Obey. The princes dropped their spears, their faces pale. The people wept and bowed to the ground. Chike trembled, tears filling his eyes. He felt the weight of the ancestors upon him. The drum beat one last time, and then fell silent. At dawn, the elders placed the crown on Chike's head. He was no longer the orphan boy people ignored. He was Chike the Chosen, king of Umuaka. And though he wore no fine beads, and though his hands were rough from work, his heart was gentle. Under his rule, the village found peace, because he led not with pride, but with humility. The people of Umuaka never forgot what happened. And parents told their children for generations. A crown is not made of gold, but of character. Pride may shout, but humility speaks louder. True leadership is not given by birth, but by the heart. And whenever the talking drum was struck, its deep voice seemed to whisper the same words again and again. The king is chosen by the heart.